Starting off our list at number 10, we have Leighton Meister. This one is by far one of the craziest celebrity birth stories I have ever heard. In 1986, Leighton's mom was in prison after being arrested for smuggling illegal substances out of Jamaica. Turns out she was serving her time when she was pregnant with Leighton and still had 16 months left of her sentence, which means that Leighton was born in jail. She wasn't physically born inside a jail cell, her mother was actually transferred to the hospital for the birth. The now Hollywood actress spent the first few months of her life in a halfway house before eventually being placed in custody of her grandmother until her mom's release. After being back in the care of her parents, they got divorced and faced a ton of financial struggle. But despite all the negative things in her childhood, Leighton does not hold it against her parents. In all her interviews, she says that they are good parents and she has a lot of good childhood memories. Moving on to number 9, we have Eminem. The rapper has always been very open and honest about the dysfunctional childhood he had, which was filled with abuse and poverty. He describes his childhood as the scraping the bottom of the barrel kind of life after his parents didn't have a home and just dragged him around the Midwest, staying in different motels. His father, Bruce Mathers, deserted him and his mom when he was just a baby. As for his mom, Debbie Mathers, she was in and out of his life throughout the remainder of his childhood. She also had another son with another man, and at one point left Eminem with his great aunt and uncle who just did their best to raise him. But even when he was in the care of his mother, he says that she was very towards him. He eventually went through school but got bullied so bad physically that he was in a coma for a few days. That experience later turned into his 1999 song called Brain Damage, if you've ever wondered. When he was just 17 years old, he dropped out of school and went on to chase his dream of a rapper, and the rest is pretty much history. But you should watch 8 Mile if you don't know how that happened. Up next, number 8, we have Soon-Yi. Her life became one of the biggest controversies in 2020 after her relationship with her adoptive father became a lawsuit. She was born in South Korea around 1970 and actually has no birth certificate. Her approximate age was determined by bone scans. In 1976, she was found living on the streets, eating out of dumpsters before being adopted by Mia Farrow and Woody Allen, who had huge careers in Hollywood. Years down the road, when Soon-Yi was in high school, Mia found inappropriate nude photos of her in her husband's home. The truth was later revealed that the two of them actually had an ongoing romantic relationship with each other, and that continued on to present day. They are now married to each other despite being father and daughter through adoption papers. Soon-Yi is now 50 years old and Woody is 85. This strange relationship opened up a lot of other secrets in the family, with one of his other daughters claiming that he also did inappropriate things with her when she was a child. As of right now, the lawsuits he is facing are still unsettled. In spot number 7, we have Angelina Jolie. The Hollywood star grew up in Los Angeles, which might seem like a dream for a lot of people, but it was not all glitz and glam in her childhood. She says she suffered from depression at a very young age because she just didn't appreciate her life. She talked to the Wall Street Journal and said she couldn't appreciate or understand her life at the time, which led her to be very destructive and miserable. She explained and said, "I was raised in a place where if you have fame and money and you're decent looking and have the ability to work in this industry, you have everything in the world. Then you attain those things and realize you still couldn't be more empty." Things got so dark for her that her childhood caregiver once said that she had to take Angelina to the hospital because her struggles with anorexia were so severe. And for anyone who doesn't know, she was actually born into parents who were already actors at the time, so she grew up in a world of fame. In spot number 6, we have Lindsay Lohan. Her childhood was spent in front of the cameras as her family had close connections to the show business when her personal career started out. Fans have seen Lindsay's personal struggles in her adult life, like her DUIs and time in jail, but many have wondered if her childhood played a part in any of that. She did have struggles in her family. Her dad was married to her mom for 22 years but filed for divorce in 2007. He struggled with alcohol and substance addiction for many years, even appearing on Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew. His struggles were also legal issues. He served 3 years in prison from 1990 to 1993, another year in 1997, and 2.5 years in 2004. Her mom struggled too. She was also arrested and charged with a DUI of her own. In more recent times, Lindsay's dad was back in jail in April 2021 for new charges, and her mom was charged on May 4th, 2021 on felony drunk driving. Halfway through our list, at number 5 is Dylan McDermott. You know those unsolved true crime murder mystery shows that everyone binge watches? And by everyone, I mean me. Well, his life was actually one of them. When he was just 5 years old, someone took the life of his mother, who was just 20 years old at the time. The horrific crime was labeled accidental at the time, but still remained as an unsolved mystery for the next 4 decades of his life. His father was in jail at the time of the incident, so Dylan and his infant sister were sent to live with his grandmother before being adopted by his stepmom. Dylan wasn't an eyewitness to the crime, but he did hear shots being fired. In 2011, he took matters into his own hands to get the case reopened for investigation and confirmed that it was one of the suspects. Fingers pointed to her boyfriend at the time, who was known for being violent and addicted to substances. However, the suspect was deceased before being officially accused of the crime. Cruising into spot number 4 is Meatloaf. The singer has revealed a lot about his troublesome childhood during interviews and says there are so many things that he has blocked out as a way to cope with it all. He revealed his dad was an alcoholic who would disappear for a few days at a time and said he was physically towards him. As for his mom, she was sick with breast cancer for so long that he didn't have a normal relationship with her, and she sadly passed away when he was just 18. He admitted that it took him 10 years to deal with her death because he had actually run away to California to hide from the pain, and her last words to him were, "Where were you?" The struggle still stays with him to this day, but he says he's blacked out most of his childhood memories, but admits that a psychologist would probably help him deal with it better. Taking over our third spot is Kelsey Grammer. Fans of Frasier would never know the layers of trauma he went through in the early years of his life. His character Frasier Crane made people laugh for years, but he has a very dark past that many people don't know about. He has been open about his life experiences though, and opened up about the time when he was just 13 years old and he lost his father in front of his house. The life of his father was actually taken by a cab driver right in their front yard after luring him outside by lighting their family car on fire. Apparently there was no connection between the cab driver and his dad. That was just the start of his losses though. He actually lost his sister when her life was taken at just 20 years old. He says that the guilt of that tragedy nearly destroyed him. Then, just a few years later, his 2 half-brothers passed away in a scuba diving accident involving a potential shark attack. And then, not long after that, one of his best friends lost his life in the 9/11 attack. He has faced tremendous amount of loss in his life, which played a huge part in his alcohol addiction. Thankfully though, as years went on, he has been able to get sober, and eventually, he just left his pain in the past and was able to move forward. He lost everyone. Like, I can't even imagine his dad, his sister, his 2 brothers, a best friend. Rolling into the number 2 spot, we have Britney Spears. Her tense relationship with her father has made worldwide news after people found out that he had total control over her life and finances legally and refused to give them back to her. Her father, Jamie Spears, was put under her conservatorship following her public breakdown in 2008 after she was proven to not properly be able to care or manage herself during her mental health struggles. That was over a decade ago though, and people cannot understand how he still has access since she seemed to turn her life back around. Britney has been asking the judge to permanently remove him from her conservatorship, revealing that the 2 of them have never had a good relationship and that he is not doing it with her best interests in mind. The hashtag Free Britney started in 2020 as the world is now petitioning for her to get the rights back to her conservatorship, which is actually split into 2 parts. One for her estate and financial affairs, and the other for her as a person. Her father still has control of both. We've made it to number 1, and we have Charlize Theron. Not many people know about her traumatic childhood, but she shared it with the world and left people completely shocked. She grew up in a farm in South Africa, and at age 13 she wanted to continue her ballet studies, so she began attending a boarding school that specializes in the arts. During a visit home when she was just 15 years old, her mother shot and took the life of her father in an act of self-defense. Turns out he was drunk and began shooting at her and then threatened to harm the children as well, so she started to shoot back. Charlize says she survived the incident, which she's very proud of, and also thanks her mom for quite literally saving her life. Beginning our list at number 10 is Nicki Minaj. The singer has been said to have found her set of wings within a broken nest. In other words, she came from a troubled childhood. In 2010, she revealed that her father was an aggressive substance addict who subjected herself and her mother to neglect, theft, and even arson. She spoke candidly with Vibe magazine and said, "When you have a father who is stealing your furniture and selling it so that he can buy crack, you suffer. You come home from school and your couch is gone. You're like, what happened?" Nikki was actually born in Trinidad but moved to New York at just the age of 5. She revealed that she lived in constant fear when she was young, worried that her father would end the life of her mother. But her father did get the help that he needed later in life and checked into rehab and started going to church. Sadly, he was struck by a vehicle earlier this year and passed away. Nikki has said that it has been the most devastating loss of her life. That's so sad. Up next, number 9, we have 50 Cent. Before he became one of the biggest rappers in the world, he grew up in a very broken home. His real name is actually Curtis Jackson, for anyone who has ever wondered but been too lazy to Google it. His father abandoned his family when he was born, and his mom was a substance dealer when he was very young. Sadly, his mother passed away when he was just 8 years old, so he was sent to live with his grandma. While his grandma did care for him the best that she could, Curtis seemed to follow down his mother's footsteps and went down a dark path with substances. He was arrested when he was just 18 for possession of a weapon at his high school. Even as his life and career progressed, he still struggled to break away from substances. It wasn't until his son came into the world where he made changes in his life. In 2005, he told People magazine, I quote, "My priorities changed. My son is the reason I stopped doing the things my mother was doing." I didn't even know he had a kid, to be honest. Swiping our number 8 spot is Christina Aguilera. Many people don't know the dark side of her past, and that's because she always puts on a very strong face. Even in her music, she came across as a very strong, independent woman. But in a candid discussion with E! News, fans got to learn a lot more about her personal life and where she came from. During her interview, she revealed that when she was a child, she felt completely powerless against her father, who was very aggressive and violent. She admitted that she turned to singing as an outlet for that. Christina's mother Shelly once remembered a very terrifying incident when she found Christina at just 4 years old with her face all bruised up. Turns out her father was napping and she apparently made too much noise. Her mom eventually left him and took her and her sisters to live with their grandmother so that they could be safe. To this day, Christina says the pain that she felt at home is actually where her love for music came from. Sliding into number 7 is Drew Barrymore. You would never know the struggle she faced in her childhood based off her successful career and always beaming smile. But her childhood was so dark and twisted that she was put into an institution at just 13 years old. When she was just 11 months old, she first appeared in a commercial and then booked the role in E.T. at age 7. Her parents struggled with their own addiction problems, and Drew picked up the habits on her own at a very young age. She revealed that she started pouring liquor over her ice cream when she was just 7 years old, and got drunk for the first time at Rob Lowe's birthday party when she was just 9 years old, all under the guidance of her mother. She went out partying with her mother up to 5 times a week, and at age 12 began trying illegal substances. She was fighting a drug and alcohol addiction by the time she was 13 and had undergone rehabilitation treatment for 18 months. Her father left her and just stopped being a part of her life, and when she got out of treatment, she filed for emancipation from her mom, so she was living on her own at 14 years old. As she got older, she worked at a local cafe and just continued to pursue acting. Cruising into number 6 is Ashley Judd. Her on-screen presence would never show that she has been through some traumatic experiences in her childhood, but fans got to learn all about them in her memoir. In 2011, she wrote a memoir called All That Is Bitter and Sweet and revealed shocking details of the neglect, assault, and exposure to substances that she faced when she was younger. Because of how traumatic her life was growing up, she admitted to being severely depressed throughout her life. She said that she was neglected during her mother's rise to fame as a country superstar, which most people might think would be really cool to have a parent gaining fame as a musician. But it was actually the opposite for Ashley, and she was happy to finally share it with the world. When talking about sharing all these very disturbing details to the public, she said, "The shame and the keeping ourselves sick through secretiveness is one of the things we all need to have the courage to undo." Halfway through our list at number 5 is Brandon Thomas Lee. At first thought, it might be pretty cool to have your parents be Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee, but apparently it wasn't all glitz and glam like some of us might have thought. Brandon and his brother Dylan have talked about growing up in a very difficult childhood life. For one, having their mom as the biggest sex symbol in the world was a struggle, as we can imagine. But Brandon revealed that things between his parents were very toxic. The two of them got into physical altercations, and the kids were always in childcare, not being raised by the parents full time. Pamela ended up sending Brandon and Dylan to a boarding school in Canada, so they were separated for a while. As the boys grew older, they did find their way back to mend things with their mom, but in 2018, when Brandon was 24, he got into a physical altercation with his dad and actually knocked him out. Fans see Brandon talk about his relationship with his parents on The Hills, as he was added as a new cast member in the reboot series. Up next, number 4, we have Missy Elliott. Fans learned a lot about Missy during her feature on Behind the Music, but they never expected to hear about how much she suffered in her upbringing. She revealed disturbing details about how she was assaulted by one of her cousins for the course of a year, too young to really understand what was happening at the time. She also admitted that later down the road she had to experience extreme poverty, which is just a testament to how far she's come having this wildly successful musical career. When it comes to her parents, she revealed that she had to witness some very terrible things growing up, as her father would assault her mother right in front of her. There was one specific incident she remembers from her childhood where her father had threatened to end her mother's life, and her uncle, who lived next door, actually had to come and step in and end the argument because it escalated and got very dangerous. So to say that she's come a long way would honestly be an understatement. Taking over our third spot is Ariel Winter. The actress shared her personal life with the world in recent years, revealing that she missed out on a normal childhood after living in isolation with her mom for 14 years. She grew up in the spotlight after landing a lead role on the TV series Modern Family, and admitted that she had a lonely, intense childhood due to a relationship with her now estranged mother. She explained their strained relationship and said that growing up it was just the two of them, and Ariel wasn't allowed to have connections with other people. She also said her mom emotionally and physically her when she was very young. At 14 years old, she emancipated herself from her mom and moved in with her sister Chanel Gray until she was 18. Once she moved out away from her mom, she was able to reconnect with her dad and said that they grew incredibly close, calling him today a great friend and a good person. Moving on to number 2, we have Oprah Winfrey. Because she has spent her career smiling and helping other people through their own struggles, many people are shocked to know that she went through her own. She had anything but an ideal upbringing and began suffering from at a very young age. She suffered through this trauma by multiple relatives and turned to substances in order to cope with things. When she was just 14 years old, she was sent to live with her father and discovered that she was pregnant at 14. Sadly, the baby boy was born 2 months premature and did not make it past 2 weeks. Oprah has talked about how she felt very betrayed by a family member who sold the story of her son to the National Enquirer in 1990. But in more recent years, she has openly talked about her son and said that she finally gave him a name, which was Canaan, because it means new land, new life. We have made it to number 1, and we have Jim Carrey. This one always hits closer to home for me personally because the legendary actor actually grew up right here in Ontario, and to see how far he has come is honestly mind-blowing. He came from a good family, but things got difficult for them when his father lost his job when he was just 12 years old, and then Jim had to kind of step up and be like that father figure in a sense. Jim has talked about being homeless and how much they struggled to even get by. He revealed that their family lived in a van for a while, and they all had to work together as security guards and janitors just to try and make ends meet. The actor said he had to work a 40-hour work week while being a young teenager just to try and keep his family off the streets. One thing that helped him progress was that he started booking comedy gigs in Toronto at local comedy clubs to make some extra money. So to go from being homeless booking gigs at small venues to one of the biggest comedic actors in the world is pretty crazy and inspiring. I actually just found out he's from Ontario like 2 years ago.